Hey, what's up everyone? This is Valoramous. In today's music producer tutorial, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to provide my reflections on the year 2020. So this is going to be a little different than the average tutorial, but I think it's important to reflect as we come to the end of the year. So 2020, as we all know, was a very different year than we were all used to. The entire paradigm shifted in about mid-March. I remember the date because I had a DJ gig the night prior on March 13th and then March 14th Saturday, at least here in Germany. The entire dynamic changed. So I want to provide a few thoughts on the year 2020, reflect back on my experience, and then provide you with 3 takeaways that I learned as a DJ and a producer. So starting off 2020, I was in the midst of a move, a transatlantic or transoceanic move from Washington, D.C. to Germany. And so I took an extended vacation in Florida to spend time with family. And during that time, I was following the news and seeing what was coming. And a lot of people still were not taking it seriously at all, but I knew that this was gonna possibly change the way we conducted business. And sure enough, 2 months later, I was right. So after I moved to Germany in February of 2020, I was looking for an apartment in the dead of winter, which, by the way, pro tip, I personally think it's better to move in winter because you're competing with less people. If you move in the middle of the summer, especially to a high demand area, especially if there's schools and universities and a high turnover of housing, you want to do your move in the middle of winter. So yeah, there may be less options, but you have less competition and the landlords are a bit more willing to cut you deals to move into a place in the middle of winter because fewer people are moving. But yeah, sidebar, that's a tangent. So I found an apartment in the middle of winter, the one you see right here. And then right as soon as I signed the lease, as soon as I moved in, then the lockdowns began. So obviously this changed the way of doing business because I lost all of my DJ gigs. So it cut that source of income that I had coming in. Fortunately, I'm fine, but it definitely changed the way that we live and think, because right now, a lot of the in-person business has been cut. So if you're in the entertainment sector, you're in the bar, restaurant industry, you're DJing, doing private events, a lot of that stuff is gone. So this takes me to my first takeaway, and that is you need to move businesses virtual as much as possible. Now, it's not always possible in many industries because a lot of it is dependent on face-to-face, but see if you can think about certain ways you can monetize your skills virtually. And I think one great way to do this is through tutoring. So if you are a tutor and you have a skill in whatever field, but I'm coming at this from a DJ producer perspective, you can give virtual lessons through Zoom, through Skype, through Microsoft Teams. There's a whole host of platforms you can use to conduct services. Another way is to do online courses, so create virtual courses that you can sell. But I do recommend you move virtual as much as possible. So even as a DJ, and your gigs are pretty much reliant on being up close in person. And let's be honest, you cannot replicate a live stereo, loud sound system, like a festival sound system with a dance floor. You just simply cannot replicate that at your home. So I don't think this is ever gonna go away. This will return, but right now, in the meantime, if you're a DJ producer, you need to be doing things such as creating that website, enhancing your social media presence, maybe running advertising, creating videos, creating content. You need to show a virtual presence because when this is all over, the ones that are gonna get into gigs are gonna be the ones with that virtual presence. And if you've been sitting back not doing this stuff, well, the guys that have are gonna have that advantage. So that's my first takeaway, is to move virtual as much as possible. Okay, my second and my third takeaways are somewhat related, but I do think it's important to separate and distinguish the two. So my second takeaway is that it is possible to grow a side hustle, grow a business in the arts. So I'm coming at this from a DJ producer perspective, and I'm saying that it is possible to grow. Now, it will take a lot of effort to grow, but it is possible in the arts because there is a demand for DJs. Not everyone out there can DJ music. Not everyone has the equipment. The equipment costs a lot of money in the first place. And private mobile DJs, I know a lot of bar, club, public events DJs that make fun of the private events guys, but the private events guys make a decent amount of money. And that's because their services are in demand, just like with photographers and wedding florists, decorations people, these services will always be needed. So I do think it is possible to grow, but it will involve a lot of effort on your part. So just a bit of backstory on myself. When I started this year, I only had a couple of hundred followers on Instagram, and now I have quintupled that size. On Spotify, I had a very small amount of followers, and I have 9 or 10 times that amount. Same thing with SoundCloud, 9 or 10 times. YouTube, I have tripled my presence. Now again, you may say, oh, well, you had very small numbers, so you had nowhere to go but up. That's true, but if you look at the numbers and take a step back, you're comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. So one phrase for improvement that I like to think of is just every day or every week, just try to be 1% better. Take a step back, even if something is reducing in size, in quantity, or maybe even in quality over a short-term frame, broaden your horizon to a longer time span or a longer time frame and look at the big picture. Are you improving over time or are you not? And if you're improving over time, then you have nothing to worry about. So I do think it's possible to grow, but it will take a lot more effort than you're probably thinking, which brings me to my third point. That's why I wanted to separate the two. The third thing I learned about being a DJ and producer is just how long this takes. Now, I was first really inspired by electronic dance music in 2010, and here we are, it's the end of 2020, and I'm just now starting to get the elements put into place. I had the original idea to launch this project in 2015, that's 5 years ago, over 5 years ago, but I didn't actually pull the trigger until 2017. So I started learning how to DJ in 2017 while I was living in New York City, and then I didn't begin producing music, being a producer, until 2018. And now 2.5, 3.5 years later, as a producer and as a DJ respectively, I still think there's a lot to learn. I'm still not quite there yet. So just how long this takes, well, this takes years. This could take 5, 10 years to really master this craft. And that's why Malcolm Gladwell had that viral chapter of his book, Outliers, the 10,000 hour rule, is because it requires a lot of hours that you must invest into any kind of craft. Same thing with Robert Greene in his book, Mastery. It requires a lot of dedicated practice, and you need to put in this time. I'd say at least 5 to 10, if not 20 hours every week to a craft in order to get good at it, because those hours will eventually add up. But if you're not willing to put in the work, it's not going to happen overnight. This whole story of the overnight success story, the lottery ticket where this one-hit wonder band gets lucky with the first song they ever release and goes viral and gets big after that one song, that's an exception to the rule. In a lot of cases, even when that happens, those artists are not having a long-term career. I know there's a couple of exceptions that do, but a lot of the one-hit wonders, that's why they're called one-hit wonders, because they have that one hit early on and then they don't do anything. But if you want to have a sustainable career, and not just having radio hits, but having a long-term presence in an industry, you need to put in the time, you need to put in the practice. And this process could take years, because there are several mountains to climb, especially in the DJ producer world. As a producer, the first year, you're gonna struggle just trying to learn the program. You're gonna have to learn music theory if you have no musical background. I had no musical background. So by investing in that time though, by planting those seeds, there will be a harvest that comes later. So what I want you to do is think of the long-term picture. And that's my final point. The final thing I learned in 2020 is not only how long this takes, but think of the big picture and play the long ball game. That's the final takeaway that I want to leave you with. There you have it. Those are my thoughts on 2020 and my 3 lessons that I learned in this year. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? What are your top 3 lessons in 2020, or just any lesson in general you learned? What are your experiences in 2020? Did this change the way that you conduct business? Were you fine through the pandemic? Did you adapt? Did you improvise? Did you overcome? I want to hear from you. So if you like this content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.